Hello everyone, I'm Millie. I'm in my first year of Exeter University, which I'm enjoying very much. I'm studying natural sciences and I'm very happy to be on this call.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. So Millie, what I wanted to do is to go back over the whole story. I mean, let's just start with the sort of young person that you were before you ever encountered the ticks. So tell me, just describe yourself as a young person, what you remember of yourself before this all started.
I was a very typical teenage girl who was just loved sport, loved hanging out with friends, loved my weekends basically just consisted of sport, to be honest.
Yeah, the kind of sport you were playing, just tell us about that.
So I'd go cycling every weekend with my dad. I'd be in the netball team, lacrosse team. Just hanging out with friends.
And so in the summer, I know that you very often used to go down to Devon or Cornwall, and surfing was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I love surfing.
Okay. And it's worth saying that right now you're in a ski resort. And were you skiing as a teenager as well?
Yeah, I've skied since I was 3, which
Wow.
yeah, basically since I could walk.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the background, and then let's talk about that Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. So talk me through it. You went to the New Forest.
So I think it was July 2018, um, I went on Duke of Edinburgh, just the bronze, so only for 2 days. And it was really good fun actually. I really enjoyed it. It was boiling though. Um, but yeah, I got bitten by several ticks and I removed them all.
Yeah. Now the thing is that my understanding is that you were with quite a number of friends, and you had some advice about avoiding ticks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us about that. What do you remember of the advice?
There wasn't a lot. Basically, just cover up, wear tick repellent, which I did do, and check yourself when you get home. But not nothing
Okay, and
really.
that covering up bit was tricky because it was so hot. It was a really,
Yeah,
really hot week in July,
it was
wasn't it?
brave.
So in fact, most you and your friends were really not able to follow that advice, in all honesty.
We wore trousers definitely the first day, and I think second day was half and half. Some people did,
Yeah.
some didn't.
And my understanding is that all of you had realized that you got ticks attached when you came home.
Oh yeah, and there's a number of. I was the only one who actually got Lyme's disease, but lots of us got
No,
ticks.
but a number of your friends had ticks when they got home and had to remove them.
Yeah.
And then tell us about the tick that you didn't notice when you first got home. What was the story?
So I noticed it a week later, um, on my lower back, um, and as soon as I found it, because my mum knew a bit about Lyme disease, and she was like, "I think we should just get it properly removed." So we went to the doctors.
Yeah, so the reason that you hadn't spotted it first time was that it was just somewhere that it was really very difficult for you to see.
Yeah,
And then by the time you did notice it, it was a bump on the skin. It was a lump, yeah?
yeah, it definitely grown.
Because it was so engorged. And so you went to the GP, and actually I can fill this bit in because your mum told me that the GP took a pair of gloves off the wall, popped his gloves on, and got hold of the body of the tick and then just squeezed it and pulled it off your skin. Is that what you remember?
Yeah, that's what happened, which that now is not ideal.
Yeah. And did he realize that there were some mouth parts or anything still in the skin, or?
I think he did. I think he did look, but he didn't say anything.
And at that point, you didn't go on any antibiotics or anything, did you?
No, we did ask because my mum did a bit of research, and he said basically until you get symptoms, we're not going to prescribe you with any antibiotics.
Fair enough. And so then what happened?
So then about a week later, I got very ill with basically just like the flu. But this was on the
And this
border.
was midsummer, and you were down with the family in the West Country.
Yes, and then but I became really ill on a Saturday, so our doctors wasn't open, so we went to A&E, who we basically explained what had happened.
So you went to the A&E department locally down. Is this Cornwall or
No, this is, I think it
Devon?
was, I want to say it was the Seven Oaks A&E.
Oh, I see. You hadn't even gone on holiday at that point.
No, this is at home still.
Okay. So you
Um,
went to the A&E department.
who we basically said basically following the exact what normally happens to people who are coming down with Lyme disease. Like it was all the typical symptoms.
Well, remind us, what were you experiencing?
At this point, it was flu. I could barely get out of bed. I had really bad joint pain. My vision was going funny. My muscles were all twitching. I've just the worst headache ever. So we basically said, I think it's Lyme disease, and he never really, he quite clearly didn't know what that was. So he went off and Googled it. And then he prescribed me with 3 weeks of amoxicillin.
Okay. You would have been, what, 15 years old then?
Yes.
Okay. So he prescribed you with amoxicillin, and just did that make any difference? Did it help at all?
No, I declined quite rapidly, to be fair. That was very rough 3 weeks for me.
And what happened next? Do you remember?
Next, I've basically stayed in bed for 3 weeks. I was taking blood tests, um, and then it was just sort of because we both had no idea really what to do, so we were just sort of
But
waiting.
I thought, I mean, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I thought that you had gone with the family to the coast, and that you just didn't feel up to doing anything. You couldn't get out of bed to go surfing at all. Is that?
Yeah, we also did go to Italy, and they were like, come sit by the pool, Millie, and chill, and I was like, no, I just want to stay in bed, thank you. It was really rough.
And totally unlike you. And so what was the next step in terms of change of therapy? Because I think that dose of amoxicillin that you were put on was not a particularly high dose.
No, so then we contacted the Cornwall Lyme charity, who they recommended 3 weeks of Doxycycline, I'm pretty sure, which again didn't do a lot for me. But that by now is pretty much my whole summer was just written off.
Yeah, and now you're trying to get back into school, and you've got your GCSEs coming up,
Panicking.
and feeling absolutely rotten.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so, do you remember what was the next big step?
Then we went to see a specialist in Ireland, who was very helpful. He doesn't really take much interest in the results. It was more symptom based. And he prescribed 2 antibiotics. I can't remember.
Oh, don't worry, Millie, that's okay. It's
Sorry.
okay. So you went on to a new combination of 2 antibiotics. Do you remember vaguely how long you were on those for?
I think months. I think about 3 months.
Okay, and do you remember that making a big difference? Was that helping you keep going with your schoolwork?
Oh no, my attendance at this point was about 10%, probably 1 lesson every 3 days.
Yeah.
It really helped my joint pain, but then everything else was still pretty bad.
And you had this extraordinary, I remember you describing that your forearm, that the muscles in the forearm were twitching. In fact, I think you took a video of it at one stage, didn't you? The muscles twitching in a way that was obviously beyond your control. It was involuntary.
It was often as well. It was like 5 times a day that would happen.
And was it waking you at night?
No, it wasn't waking me at night.
And were you getting other sensations, other pins and needles or numbness or tingling or?
Yeah, I've always had really bad circulation, to be fair, but it definitely got a lot worse.
Mm-hmm. And your eyesight's been a bit of a problem through this
That
time.
still hasn't recovered. That's never really got better.
Well, let's just, so you've been on this double combination of antibiotics from the specialist in Ireland, and then you went to Germany, isn't that right?
We went to the BCA clinic because they look at both, because both at this point we're sort of, the antibiotics weren't working that well, so we're going to look at the herbal approach as well. So they sort of did both, they coincided. So that was our next sort of hope, but that didn't go down well. And that was the first time that they prescribed me on a 6-month treatment, and that was the first time that it properly sunk in for me. I was like, oh god, I'm really in this for the long haul now. Because before that I think it was just in denial, and then I was like, oh no. So that was a really hard time, because I felt so ill as well, but mentally that was really challenging.
Yeah. And I remember when he came back, I think that was around the time that your GP got in touch with me, because I think he was pretty worried about the kind of number of drugs that you were on.
Yeah.
And because you were having a lot of supplements and the antibiotics. And so I think that was when I first met you, was around that time.
Yeah, definitely.
And the prescriptions were coming from the BCA clinic. But I felt that I could at least give you and your mum some guidance about and some support around the whole issue of the long-term nature of the treatment you were needing.
Yeah, it was so helpful, honestly, because at this point we'd spoken to quite a few doctors, and they were all saying different things, which was quite overwhelming because we didn't really know what to do with what. So it was really nice to get like a opinion.
Okay, and then there was a point, I mean, because I wasn't doing the prescribing for you, but there was a point I remember when there was a change in the antibiotics and you were put onto a drug called rifampicin. Do you remember that?
Yes, that was definitely the one that made a significant difference, in my opinion.
Can you just describe what difference it made?
The main thing that I've really struggled with throughout all of this is my energy levels. Like I just couldn't get out of bed. But the rifampicin really improved them. So I started being able to attend school more and just basically get back to my life a little bit more.
But in fact, much of that school year had already been eaten up with very poor health, and but you managed to get the GCSEs, which was a huge testament to your determination.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I mean, that was now 2019. After the GCSEs, what are your memories? Just try and fast forward through, because you're still on polymicrobial therapy at that point, antimicrobial therapy.
Yes, after that, I did get a lot better in the summer. Maybe it was just properly relaxing and not having a lot going on. I'm not sure. But still just not the same.
And so you're entering your A-level years still feeling way off 100%.
Still pretty anxious. Still wouldn't be doing sport at all. That was never really in the picture.
Mm.
But I was starting to socialise with my friends a lot more, which was a real challenge in the first year of Lyme disease, because you felt it was quite isolating. So that was the first time that summer that I really got back into the swing of things.
Yeah, and then it was a bit up and down. But what's your memory of the next, those A-level years?
I'd sort of trying to live with it at this point. The rifampicin made a big difference. I kind of, you'd have good days and bad days. Some days you'd have awful insomnia. Other days all you needed to do was sleep. And then but there were the number of good days started to increase. So it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I can't remember when you got that dog. When was that?
We got Flossie. She's a year and a few months now. She's a little sweetie.
And you began to try and take her on walks and things, yeah?
Well, she's got way more energy than I do. She's crazy.
Right. Okay. And then, I mean, my recollection was that you had, at that point, got a great deal of anxiety about coming off any of the medication because you just didn't want to relapse.
No.
And just explain or talk through how you did manage to get off those antibiotics in the end.
So in between all these different antibiotics that I'd been taking over the few years, in the gaps I did get significantly worse. So the thought of coming off the antibiotics, which I think was around Christmas time of 2019, or was it? Yeah, maybe, I can't remember. 2020.
Yeah, because you did your A-levels.
Yeah,
in
2020.
lockdown, didn't you?
So I was petrified, and I remember you basically saying, like, I really think you should come off them because no one should be on antibiotics for that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do it all at once, did we?
No, so we weaned off them. I think we took the most toxic one out first. I think we went off rifampicin first. Yeah.
And then gradually, one by one, you were able to realize that you weren't relapsing, and whilst actually you got through your A-levels and did really well, and got that place at Exeter, and you didn't take a gap year, did you?
No.
And that was
about it because I was very worried about going to uni. Like, will I be okay? Because I've never really had that. I've never done sport, socializing, and school in one. So I was like, oh my god, will I even cope at uni? But thankfully, I've managed.
Oh, you've done better than manage.
Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've really thrown yourself into it and made good friends, and here we are. It's the second half of your first year. Yeah. Are there things that you still can't do that you'd like to be able to do?
I've still got to be careful. Like, I can't eat some of the things I want to eat. I can't eat too much sugar still because I feel horrendous the next day. I still can't push myself. If I'm feeling tired, I really should just go to bed. So I shouldn't really try and push through it because I will just.
But here you are with a friend skiing at the moment.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
And in terms of sport at uni, what have you got into?
I'm part of the tennis society, so I'm back playing tennis, which I'm really enjoying. It's a really nice society. But yeah, some social netball's been really fun.
Okay. I mean, you have been on a very difficult journey, And is there anything that you'd want to say to either your younger self or to others who are in the same position from your perspective now? What's your overall take on this?
I think I would say take it day by day, because it's very easy to be like, oh, I've missed this much of this year. When's it gonna get better? Get really bogged down about the time periods and just stressed out about how much you're missing. But if you take it step by step, and then hopefully, and then it will eventually get better. The more you stress about it, the worse you feel, is what I would say. But I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and also that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you have
Yeah,
come through it, and that your life is no longer on hold. You are getting on and really moving forwards.
for sure. Oh, if I could tell myself that 2 years ago, then I would have been a lot happier.
Okay, good. Millie, thank you. And I hope that you'll be able to answer a few questions with colleagues who are on the line. Very many thanks for doing this interview. And yeah, I mean, just to really wrap up that whole episode, what did I add? Not very much. I wasn't doing the prescribing. I certainly worried that there was some other misdiagnosis. I mean, interestingly, the National Reference Laboratories to whom we sent blood from Millie, both in the UK and in France, failed to corroborate the results from the BCA lab. But Jack has already made the point that we're treating patients, not results necessarily. I wanted to make sure that we weren't missing some other diagnosis, that we're thinking about, rheumatological and autoinflammatory and other infective disorders, all of which the tests that I sent were negative. And could we be missing a pathogen that we don't even know exists? And I think that's still possible. I mean, I was very struck that the rifampicin made such a difference, but I'm not sure what it was that was treating, that some of the other things that she had failed to treat. I was supporting her and the family to try and make sure she wasn't having drug-drug interactions. I was supporting the GP locally to say, keep going, we're going to win through, she's going to be all right. And I think that was maybe of some help. As a PEDS ID specialist, what was I being consulted about over that period of time? And some of it was about acute presentations of Lyme, and lots of colleagues would call up just for advice, and very often it was just for some reassurance. Mostly it was pretty uncontroversial stuff, management of an EM rash. Do you really mean this dose of amoxicillin? Children with facial nerve palsies and so on. Over the years, I heard some extraordinary myths. I mean, I remember a child in Nottingham who was only about 10 months old when the family had been in one of the deer parks outside Nottingham, and this child had been crawling around on the ground and had actually, I don't think that the family had seen a tick attached, but 2 or 3 weeks later, got an absolutely classic erythema migrans rash, and was told in the emergency department, oh, no, children under 1 can't get Lyme disease. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary how people, out of ignorance, make up so-called facts. And this idea that if a tick is removed within 24 hours, you can't possibly get any transmission. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, does it? And that doxycycline is unsafe, and as I'm sure you're aware, unsafe in children under 12, that's history. And in fact, it's been used in children as young as 4 because of, without any adverse effects, because it's the drug of choice for Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And certainly here in the UK, we use it without worry in children 8 and over. So a few things to go home thinking about. Beware the questing tick. Look for ticks in the hairline and on the scalp in children, and think about those tick prevention strategies. And the chronic presentations, I mean, what's interesting about Millie is that she merged into something that became really very chronic. And this is hugely challenging. You really do need to rely on a decent history, on understanding the tick exposure, how likely is this to be tick-borne infection compared to the other possibilities in a wide differential diagnosis. recognize that antibody testing is going to remain positive and not be very helpful if children are living in endemic areas. Even if they test positive, it might not be from this particular exposure. I had the bonus of looking after children whose parents had the resources to take them all over the world. So lots of treatment centers, both in North America and in Europe. And what I can tell you is that there is no one golden bullet that everybody should be using. There's no one treatment regimen that everybody should be using, but we should be treating our patients as individuals. And time undoubtedly helps. Multi-professional support is really needed, and the team around the young person is very important, including dealing with the safeguarding issues. And I have been involved in really quite a number of potentially very, very distressing situations where families are facing child protection procedures, which you really do need to think twice as a healthcare professional, who is going to benefit from that. And if you can contain things and keep things safe, then in the long run, the majority of the young people that I've looked after have done very well. In fact, literally just last week, the very first child I treated, who was 12 years old with fairly late onset symptoms, has just and who lost 2 years of schooling through illness, has made it into medical school, and it's really, really rewarding to see that. Although, of course, some colleagues on the call will be thinking, well, that's nothing to do with an infectious disease at all. It's akin to chronic fatigue, and we know that a lot of the young people with chronic fatigue get better. But in the same way, the support that they need for school and education are all pretty crucial. And I bet that the incidence and potentially prevalence of tick-borne infection is going to increase in children across the UK in years to come. And I hope that we can go on creating greater awareness amongst healthcare workers. And hopefully there will be people in the audience tonight, or Millie herself, who's going to shed much better science on this whole area. I think the diagnostics really do need some molecular science shining on it. And we need to understand the key host responses better, and then maybe we can really start understanding how you measure those cellular immune responses in the ways that we're used to doing for TB and for HIV and for other conditions. The studies are not going to be easy to design. This is a very heterogeneous population and heterogeneous manifestations, but I think that things will get clearer. And in the meantime, I just really do ask people to keep an open mind and to maintain the best interests of the children as central to our management. I'm going to just say thank you to both Anne and my colleagues in the Lyme Disease Spotlight group, and also John Tullock, who's a brilliant veterinary scientist up at Liverpool, and actually I should say my colleagues at Porton Down as well, who've helped me over the years, and Hani, who was involved, I think, in the Big Tick project and is a scientist in Nottingham. So thank you for listening.